9. Ignition sequence.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
1, 0, and liftoff.
Mission complete, Houston. After serving the world for over 30 years, the space shuttle turned its place in history and it's come to a final stop.
Ray Bradbury ist tot. Der Autor starb im Alter von 91 Jahren in Los Angeles. Bradburys bekanntester Roman ist Fahrenheit 451, eine düstere Zukunftsvision über eine Gesellschaft, in der Bücher verboten sind. Das Werk wurde von François Truffaut verfilmt.
Well, to Ray Bradbury, the sci-fi author behind The Martian Chronicles. Now, his books and 600 short stories foretold a variety of things, from ATM machines to live broadcasts of fugitive car chases. Bradbury influenced authors, film directors, even the crew of the Apollo 15. They were so inspired by Bradbury's book Dandelion Wine that they named a lunar crater after it. And though he was known for his futuristic tales, Ray Bradbury never used a computer. He once told the New York Times that the internet was meaningless. It wasn't until last year when Bradbury finally gave in to his publisher and released Fahrenheit 451 as an e-book. Ray Bradbury, a giant of sci-fi and futurist literature, he died on Tuesday. He was 91.
1976 wurde die Enterprise als erstes Space Shuttle gebaut und jetzt hat sie ihre letzte Fahrt angetreten, und zwar über den Hudson River mit dem Ziel das Weltraummuseum in Manhattan. Hunderte Schaulustige beobachteten das Spektakel. Eigentlich hätte die Enterprise ja schon am Dienstag ankommen sollen. Wegen starkem Wind kam es aber zu Verzögerungen. Ab Mitte Juli kann die Raumfähre, die ja nie selbst im All war, dann in New York besichtigt werden.
The 20-meter-long dock is made of concrete and metal, and it was spotted floating in the water before washing up on a beach in Oregon. Now, the Japanese consulate has confirmed that the writing and tires on the dock were indeed from Japan. No word yet on what's going to happen to such a large piece of salvage. Now, it is just the latest chunk of debris to make it across the Pacific after last year's tsunami disaster. And also tracking the debris drift is our Mari Ramos. She joins us from the World Weather Center. Mari.
You know what, Christy, maybe years before we get to the bottom of this story, because there is so much debris out there in the ocean. At least that's what they expect. Most of the debris sank just off the coast of Japan right after the tsunami. There were millions of tons of debris, but there's a lot of that that began floating out to sea. So what happened was they lost track of it on the radar back in April, just about a month after the tsunami, about a month and a half after the quake and tsunami actually occurred. The reason they lost it on satellite is because a lot of it began to sink. The heaviest pieces, they believe, actually sank to the bottom of the ocean, but there's still so much debris out there, and it is being carried along by the ocean currents. The three main ocean currents here in question is going to be this one here to the north, taking the debris over to Alaska and also to the coast of the U.S. That dock that you just showed us showed up in this area right in here on this beach off the Oregon coastline. And like you said, it is one of the largest pieces of debris that has been found. There's a lot of concerns with debris this size. Not only how do you get rid of it, how do you clean it up? Number two, is there more out there? When is it going to get here? And the other thing that has environmentalists concerned is all of this marine life that is attached to this dock. They said that they have found certain types of species that are endemic to Japan that don't live on this side of the world, and they say that this could actually be a danger to the ecosystem because so many of those have made the trip alive, and they are alive and well, and they may have already be in the ecosystem and in the waters here, so that's a concern. So they're monitoring all of these things, and you got to remember, this is not the first piece of debris. This is just probably one of the largest. We had other pieces of debris that have washed up. Remember the Ghost ship back in February? That one was off the coast of Alaska, and NOAA and the U.S. Coast Guard actually ended up blowing up the ship just off the coast there to avoid it ever coming on shore and becoming even more of a hassle. And then there was that Harley-Davidson motorcycle that was found in British Columbia. Remember that one? It was actually found inside a container, what looked like the back of one of those box trucks from Japan. Well, that one is actually going to a museum now. And this, there you see the Harley-Davidson completely covered in rust there. So just example after example of what is beginning to happen. We had that story with Casey Wyan, remember, in Alaska also, where there were along the beaches, many of the beaches uninhabited, where pieces of foam and smaller pieces of debris were also washing up. So they're asking for people's help. You know, maybe you're not in Alaska, but maybe you're a mariner. Maybe you've seen some of this stuff. So they're saying, you know, whenever you see this kind of debris, email them, disasterdebris@noaa.gov. They want to be able to try to track this, input the information, and put it into the models and see if they can help determine when this stuff will actually reach the shoreline. You can follow them at Twitter, too, at Debris Tracker. And then there's an app for your iPhone or your Droid, marinedebris.noaa.gov. You can go there and try to find it. But this tsunami debris actually going to be around for a long time because the larger pieces and most of the debris, they say, is still out in the ocean. Let's go ahead and take a look at your city. The southern parts of the UK and northern France. Look at this. Wow. Some very strong thunderstorms, very strong winds expected with this as well. Now, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out a little bit and show you just the western portions of Europe. You can see the rain extending all the way from Ireland through the southern half of the UK. Winds not out of the question here, maybe up to 70, 80 kilometers per hour within these lines of storms, and the possibility of even more intense weather. You can see these lines that are forming right over here across central in France. You see these right there? Those are some very intense thunderstorms. The possibility of not only damaging winds, flooding rain, but also isolated tornadoes, quite possible. It is a little bit out of season to see such a strong storm here, so particularly in the UK, they're warning people to be extra careful and be aware that there is a strong storm along this area. We'll be monitoring it, of course, and let's hope, Christy, no tornadoes come out of this. Back to you.
Yeah, let's hope so. Big storm system there. Mari Ramos, thank you.
Station, this is Houston. Are you ready for the event?
I'm ready for the event.
ESA, this is Mission Control Houston. Please call station for a voice check.
Station, this is Rosita Svensson from the European Space Agency. How do you hear me?
Hi, Rosita, loud and clear. I'm ready.
Wonderful, Andre. I am here together with Marlene from SBS, and she has a lot of questions for you, so I'll leave the floor to her.
Hallo André, wat ontzettend leuk om nu even met je te praten. Het grootste gedeelte van je verblijf in de ruimte zit erop. Kun je nou zeggen wat een absoluut...
Almost over. Can you please tell me what the absolute highlight was so far?
Ja, er zijn verschillende hoogte.
Yes, there are different highlights, high points. I think the biggest one still has to come. But so far there have been several. One moment that has stayed with me is that at night, when the cupola where I can look outside, and I went in there without any cameras, so just by myself, and then I was flying over Europe at night, over Italy, but I could still see the Netherlands, and down below I could even see Cairo, and so that was Norway, Morocco, all of Europe. I could see all cities, all the lights. It was a beautiful moment.
Ja, je hebt ook heel veel mooie foto's.
And you also took a lot of beautiful pictures yesterday. We saw one on Twitter of Venus. What is the most beautiful picture or the most special picture you've taken so far?
Ja, dat is lastig.
Well, that's kind of difficult to say because there's so many beautiful things to see down on Earth, but also stars. What is also very special is the glow of the atmosphere, and that is probably to me the northern light or the southern light is very special to me. Saw it twice, southern light, and so that's very special, and that's almost like a fairy tale.
Nou is het natuurlijk ontzettend bijzonder.
Well, you know, it's very special that you are in space now. Which vacation can top this after this?
De aarde is fantastisch.
Well, Earth is just beautiful, planet Earth, and actually all the things you see down below, you really feel like going there. The most beautiful spot on Earth, when you look at it from space, is the Bahamas, the beautiful turquoise water, and I plan on going there after my space trip, so I want to go diving there, scuba diving. And also the area around the Sahara, Australia, these are such beautiful places, and then you really think to yourself, I really have to go visit.
Hoop te doen voor je, wat ik ook heel graag wil weten.
What I also would like to know, what is the first thing you're going to drink when you're back on Earth? That's a nice question. Food-wise, it's freeze-dried, so you just have to add a little water. These are green beans with mushrooms. And beverages is all in these pouches. It's nice, you can play with them. I'll give you a brief demonstration how it looks like. So you have to be careful, of course, because everything floats around. And that's something I will be missing, but a regular meal, so not from a pouch, will also be a nice thing to have back. So I think I'm just going to have an endive stew when I get back on Earth. So just nice at home, regular home-cooked food cooked by your wife.
Het is gelukt.
Oh, yes, you did it. Enjoy it. We also understand, André, that you are a big fan of the Dutch national soccer team. And will you be able to see the Dutch soccer games from space? Not directly, but not right now. But they're working on it hard. There are engineers that are working on it, on setting this up. And so we can see all kind of shows from down below. And they're also working on allowing me to watch the games from up here. But I'm definitely looking forward to it. I do have a soccer ball here on board, so maybe that'll have to do.
Ook een oranje tenue aan.
And so do you have a orange shirt or outfit with you? Maybe an orange cap for the Dutch national soccer team? Yes, I do have orange shirts with me with the logo. And I have worn those, so I do have the necessary outfit up here.
Nou, doe je aan boord heel veel wetenschappelijk...
Well, you're doing a lot of scientific research on board. And what can we notice or experience from your research up there? Well, scientific research up here in space is, of course, it's the variety of things. There are engineers down on Earth who work on these projects, and up here we can do it without the influence of gravity, without being impacted by that. So that is the big advantage that we have here. So the things that are researched here can be, for example, the behavior of flames, biological instruments for meteorology, physiological research, the behavior of fluids or liquids. And all these things can be applied to issues on Earth. So it's really applied science, applied research. So it's first of all it's applied to space and then it's brought back to Earth.
Allemaal goed verlopen.
So has everything gone well? I can hear only gone well. I assume that you're referring to the mission. Well, I had a great time here. I'm still going to be here for another 3.5 weeks. So I've been very busy. Today we've been working on research of liquids. And then another research we've been working on today is the eye socket. So everything's gone well so far. We haven't experienced or encountered any major problems. So both work-wise and spare time-wise, I'm very satisfied. And finally, André, do you still have a message from space for our Heart of the Netherlands television program viewers? I hope everybody has enjoyed the fact that I had the opportunity to take pictures for everybody for down below and also shoot video images, and that I was able to share those with you. I hope that it is important to be able to show you what's been going on here, and also that the Earth is very vulnerable, and that I was also able to show the work we are doing up here. Space journey still seems to be something special, but actually we're working here every day, and all these satellites that we have up here, for example, are very useful for meteorology down here. So space flight has been become part of our regular life, and I hope your viewers have been able to enjoy that. Thank you very much, Andre. We are very proud of you, of course, and wish you a very safe trip back.
And this concludes the first portion of the event.
Bye, I'll do my best.
This is also in Dutch.
This is also in Dutch. And let me introduce you to Alto de Jong.
Hey guys, we're done. Yep.
Station, this is Massimo Sabatini from the Erasmus Center in ESA Estec. How do you hear us?
Timo, it's good to hear your voice. I hear you loud and clear.
Very good. Here is Esther from Discovery Network Benelux with some questions for you, Andre.
Hello, Andre.
Hello, Andre. This is Esther Julie for Discovery Network.
Dankjewel voor je tijd.
Thank you very much for your time.
Ik zal beginnen met de eerste vraag.
I will start with the first question, which is in how far has the possibility for mankind to fly, in how far has it taught us things about the universe? I think there's two different things on which have something in common. On one side, curiosity of mankind to go to places that we are actually not made for. So, for example, we used to do that by going to the desert, and at one point we ventured out into space. And of course, the technical developments in space flight are very important to get ahead. But I think the first steps to fly in the air, well, they don't have that much to do anymore with what we're doing now in space, but they do have common ground, same origin.
Thank you
very much. What fascinates you most about space travel? Several things fascinate me about space. It started something exciting, like space aliens, and then I saw the videos, the AMX films, and then I saw the beauty of that, and so I got involved in that, and I saw the use of it. So that combination is very fascinating to me. Mankind, just like they spread out on Earth, they will also spread out in space. It's a very long process which requires a lot of new technology we haven't thought about. That's all required to get ahead to other solar systems maybe. Nothing's impossible. So I expect this to be just the first step, and I think it's fascinating to be part of this first step and to see where it is going. There's so much to explore, millions and millions of stars and planets, and I think we will be getting a lot of important things out of space journey. Who or what inspired you to become an astronaut? I think I can say my grandmother. She bought these science fiction booklets for me for 1 guilder. And it was a whole series of booklets, magazines, and I started reading them. And that actually brought me to space travel, getting interested in it. So I saw the moon cars, and I also read popular scientific magazines, and there they showed these space stations, and I was sold.
Hoe groot was volgens jou de prestatie van de eerste vlucht van...
How big an accomplishment, in your opinion, was the first flight of the Wright brothers? It was quite a big accomplishment. Several people, or quite a few people, were involved in it or working on it. It is special because they were so persistent. It had to work, and I think that is typical for people who have a dream. You need three things to get ahead. You need a dream, someone who comes up with the idea of doing a certain thing, and then you have to work it out on paper to calculate to see if it's possible, and then thirdly you need the technicians to build it. So these things, the Wright brothers all had those things and were able to accomplish that, and that's the kind of people you need to make these first impossible steps.
Thank
you very much, Andre. We still have a few minutes left. Before I proceed, could you please clap in your hands so we can make a good sentence? Thank you very much. The question that's not on the list: what is the most important phone call you ever made with a cell phone? That's a very interesting question. Most important phone call I ever made with a cell phone. Well, many calls are important. I have no idea. I really wouldn't know. I would really have to make up something.
Geeft niet. Ook vanuit de ruimte.
Doesn't matter. Also from space you send tweets. In how far has mobile communication changed the world?
Ja, heel veel.
In great part. Many people who weren't able to communicate way back when are able to do so now. For example, in third world, people are much better able to communicate, also in areas where it used to be very difficult before. And I also think it made the world a lot smaller, because you can be in contact with people anywhere. I think it offers great advantages. Then again, it also has disadvantages. For example, people who are addicted to their cell phone and also have to be able to be reached. Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we have to shut down. Oh no, we have one question left. In how far was the moon landing of Apollo 11 a great accomplishment, and why is it important for mankind to explore space? Well, the flight that was important to me was Apollo 8. That was the first time that people flew around the moon and could see Earth as a small round object, and I think it was important for mankind to realize what a small planet we are in the endless universe. So I think it was very important. It was quite an enormous achievement to land on the moon too, but flying out there, that was something very special. I think the greatest moment, it was definitely the greatest moment of last Earth. So the Apollo flights leaving our planet were very important. Thank you very much. We're going to close it off. Best of luck and thank you.
Succes.
Success.
And station, this is Houston ACR. That concludes the event. Thank you.
Welcome on board of the International Space Station. We are flying around the planet with 28,000 kilometers an hour, about 400 kilometers altitude around the planet here. Now, it's a big space station, and it's about 1,200 cubic meters. It's 100 by 80 meters, and a lot of modules. And I'm going to show you around in all the modules. We are here in the top module, and on top of the space station is the Japanese module JOP, where we have all kinds of cargo, and that is connected to the GEM, and that's where we go now. The GEM is the Japanese module. We leave the Earth here. Bye bye, Earth. So the Japanese module is pretty big. It's one of the biggest modules. It's nice, it's clean, it's roomy, and one of the features that we have here is an airlock. So this is an airlock where we can put in payloads, and it goes outside to the external platform. You see here also two windows, so we can watch the outside world and activities on the platform through the windows. It's night at the moment, so there's not much to see, but we'll see a bit of that later. Now we have a strange effect, because now you look down on me or straight at me, but then if all of a sudden you turn around the corner, then it looks a bit different. So here we're floating in the GEM, and this is a place where we have a lot of scientific racks, express racks. We have a rack for fluid physics, you mentioned it, and we have it. Of course, the work here is done by all the different astronauts. So it can be that a European is working here, Japanese, American, whoever, and that's the interesting aspect, that we use the whole station for all of us. You see that I'm standing on a rack. This is the Melfi. This is where we freeze things. So this is until -100. It's pretty cold, and that's why we have blood samples, urine samples for return to Earth. So that is where we save it. You see that I hold my feet under handrails. So we have to, because we're floating, you keep control of yourself with these handrails, with bungee cords, things like that, and everything has to be fixed somehow. So we have everywhere we have Velcro. With a little pen like this, there's a little piece of Velcro on it, and you stick it to the wall. You know, we have tape everywhere to fix things. We have this kind of Velcro straps, so you can fix it around cables, and so you need all these things to keep your stuff in place, because otherwise you lose it. It just floats away, and it doesn't fall down. You know, so if I don't follow this for a certain amount of time, it's gone, and it's hard to find. There is a place where you can find things, and this is here, for example, on the inlet filters. For example, some raisins, which I showed to my children, but that you can eat from the air, and they escape. And once you, after a while, you find them back at the air inlet. So that's always a good place to look for things. So, if you continue, then you see everywhere laptops. So this is something that we have around everywhere for the different racks. We have laptops for our daily work. We have laptops for the systems, all these kind of things. And what you see as well here is stowage. You see everywhere the room is used. So we have behind all these straps, we have stowage that goes 3 layers deep, and it's always a challenge to find your things. So it's not only like this, it's also, for example, in a rack like this. So you can tilt these racks, and it's maybe interesting to demonstrate what is behind a certain rack like this. So you can see that also behind there is cargo. Now this is a soft cover, but you can also tilt the whole rack. So it's possible to move a whole rack. That requires, of course, some more work. That's clear. Okay. Then we continue this way, and it's all floating. And that's a nice thing from spaceflight. The floating itself is nice, working with microgravity is a bit more difficult. You see that the modules, they can be closed with hatches. Here we have an example of a hatch. So in case there is an issue with a leak, for example, then we can quickly close these hatches. During my mission, we had once a debris avoidance maneuver possibility. So there was something coming to the station and that was not tracked. And as a security measure, safety measure, we closed the hatches and waited, so everything was fine. But this was a moment that we did close the hatches to the modules. On the side, if we talk about emergency cases, we have equipment for emergencies. Of course, if you lose the light, if you lose the lamps, then we have flashlights. But we also have fire. For fire, we have oxygen bottles with masks. We have fire extinguishers, and on a lot of places in the space station, we have this equipment in case we need it. Luckily, we don't have this problem yet, and but we have our fire drills, for example. Okay. Then, here we are in node 2. We talk about a little bit more, but interesting to mention is this hatch, because this is the hatch where, for example, the Dragon docks. So at the moment I'm watching into space, and below us is the Earth, but a little while ago we had here the Dragon, and in the future there will be more of these visiting vehicles there. We use it now, for example, to stow water. This bags, what you have here, this is water. So we have a lot of water on board for all kind of purposes. We can drink it. We can also use it to make oxygen out of. So this water is a very important thing on board, because we use it in many ways. So we cross and we go into the Columbus module. Now it's a busy module. It's a European module. It's pretty compact, and I've been working on every rack here. This is a very interesting module, and it's used a lot, for example, for medical research, because we have here the HRF racks, so the US racks here as well. So it's a European module, but it's filled with racks from other agencies as well, and it's interesting to work here. It's very full, and sometimes we work here with several people. Here, for example, I recently installed Althea, which is a radiation experiment. We have the biolab here. Beyond that, we have physiology racks, when I mentioned about. On top of you, so if you look up here, this is the fluid science lab. So here we do fluid experiments. So you see also the ceiling is used for all kind of experiment stuff. Now, medical experiments can be a lot. We have ultrasound, and we have an ultrasound machine, so we make echoes of our eyes, of our heart, our muscles, etc. And but we can also take blood samples. We have EEG, ECG. We have a centrifuge here for the blood samples. So this is a mini hospital. And also here you see that everything has to stick to the wall with Velcro or sticky tape, tape everywhere, just to keep things in place, like the Velcro straps. On this side you see the monitors. We also do some PEO events, so let's say public relation events, so we talk to the ground with all these cameras. This is the MARES. This is a machine to measure muscle coordination, muscle strength, and see how bad the atrophy is. We train a lot, but we are going to measure, because we don't use our muscles so much here, how serious that problem is and what we can do about it. What kind of exercise is best. So here you see an example how we get rid of trash. We have this kind of things to put trash in, and like I showed before, behind these covers we have all kind of cargo, and that's same for the ceiling. You see we have the lamps everywhere, we have ventilation outlets, we have power bricks. You see all these things, this blue bricks for power supply. You see that a lot. And so you have to be careful when you float around because there's cables everywhere and you don't want to get stuck behind that. So we go out of Columbus and we go to Node 2, which is an interesting place because this is where we sleep. And work. So we have some work tables, so you can do all kind of things and repair equipment. So this is you can move this around, and here we can do repairs. Now the sleeping is interesting because it doesn't matter because we float, so you can sleep on the ceiling or wherever you want. So that means that, for example, Gennady is sleeping on the ceiling here, and there's somebody sleeping on the floor, and Joe and me are sleeping upright, so some kind of cupboard. So you have your own place, and that is nice. It's a place where you have your own stuff. You have your sleeping bag. You have some computers, and you keep your stuff in here, family pictures and things like that. And that's just your place. So it's nice to have your own place. Where you can retreat, you can watch a movie, do your email and things like that. So this is a nice nice area. There's 4 of us here, there's 2 more, but they sleep in the Russian segment. So we float through the lab. One of the things in the lab you can see straight away, this is the bike. So people can exercise. We have to exercise every day to stay in a bit in shape. So for cardiovascular reasons, the biking is very good. It's good for your heart muscle because also your heart muscle goes down a bit and degenerates a bit. In here, a lot of scientific research as well. The US lab. We have also here a Melfi freezer, and we also have we have another sleeping quarters for the 7th crew member. Let's see if he's home. And here is the 7th crew member. This is Robonaut. So Robonaut has been active, and who knows, in the future will do the routine job for us, the routine jobs or dangerous jobs. Now, here we have camera equipment. For example, we have a lot of cameras. Some of the cameras we cannot use anymore because of because they're getting old, and so now and then we get new equipment up. We have on the ceiling you see a lot of things, a lot of cables. All this equipment we work with. It could be for air quality measurements, for example, or we have over there things, equipment for radiation. We have the express racks. We have portable equipment, or semi-portable because it's installed here for a while. This is the portable pulmonary function system with a lot of different cables, so it's always a challenge to get that activated. We have this microgravity science glove box. It's always nice for me because it's built by a Dutch company in Holland. And this is a nice place where we do experiments with for example, combustion or equipment with dangerous materials inside. So it's all contained in this glove box. So we pass by the bike. Just finishing up. Now to see, this is one of the 3 ways where we train. We run, we do fitness, so weightlifting, or what is it, against the vacuum, and we do the biking. We have also, in case we have a medical problem, we have a medical rack. This is a medical rack with a lot of equipment in there for serious cases like a defibrillator and all kind of other equipment for resuscitation, but also just the normal packs for medication, for minor infections and things like that. And this whole rack is filled with equipment where we use to see how the bacteria growth is on board, what the water quality is, sound levels, all these kind of things, the environmental health system. This is all done from this rack. We even have a stretcher. You can imagine if somebody really has a heart attack, which is very unlikely because the astronauts are all pretty healthy people. But in case you need a stretcher to put somebody in a fixed position, then we have that here. We are on this side. We are in a robotic area, so this means that from here we can operate the robotic arm. We have two of these stations, the robotic workstations. We have two of them. One is in the cupola, and one is here in the lab. And with these monitors, you can see what's going on, what the arm is doing, and where the spaceship is or where the payload is. And this is operated here with two hand controllers. And there's even a simulator for that, and that simulator is on the other side. So with this we can practice for certain robotic activities. This area is interesting because this is our food warmer. So in here we can put our food, and we heat it up. And we have a printer, also important of course. And, so the food is this kind of packages. We'll come to that later, and it gets pretty warm. So beside the food, we have, let's see on the other side. This is important to show. In case of an emergency, we have these books, and several strategic places we have these emergency books. In case we lose power and lights and computers, then we still have the books and see which actions we have to take. And if there is an emergency, there are three emergencies. We will see this here: a fire, a leak, or a leak from the pressure, or an ammonia leak when ammonia comes into the cabin. The communication with the ground goes via these ATUs, these audio terminal units, and this is how we talk. We have two channels which we use mostly. We use channel 2 in the US segment and channel 1 in the Russian segment, but that can be switched. So from here we move over to node 1, one of the first modules that was launched. It was docked to the FGB. The FGB was the first one, Saria in '98, and the next one was this node. So this is a pretty old node. Actually, this is the place where I slept during my first flight, on the floor here. There is now something else where we get to later, but I slept here above this hedge. So this is the place where we eat. Here we have our food, we have our dinner table, and we can watch a movie here that we do say on Friday evenings. And also here, as you see the table, bungees, Velcro, grey tape to fix your food. And yeah, it's of course difficult to keep clean. So you see some spots here and there from the coffee or whatever. We have also some nice stuff on the wall that everybody can use. We have our utensils here. Here's my spoon, for example. We keep here. And yeah, if we look around, because I'd like to show you where the food comes from. Here we can put all kind of things to store. Oh yeah, this is maybe interesting. This is a barcode reader. So whenever we have something deployed, be it a t-shirt, tissues or whatever, then with the barcode reader we can let the system know where we took it from and where it goes. And then, because it's a big station with a lot of items, this way the ground and we ourselves, we know where we left something. It might be a week, it might be half a year before that somebody used it, and nobody knows then where it is from memory. So we need this system. The food we get from here here we have all kind of different food that comes in big packages, and we have here a package for tea, for drinks, meats, eggs and fruit, veggies, etc., etc. So it's pretty good. There's a lot of variation in it, and if it's not good enough, then we have our bonus food. So we have bonus food containers. So things you like specifically, particularly, you can get from these bonus food containers. Also, say chocolate from your hometown and things like that. It's all here. This is a node, means there's a lot of things attached to it. One of the things is, especially from a visual point of view, very interesting. This is the crew lock and the airlock. So this is where the US spacewalks start. So we have here the crew lock where people get, well, it's a dressing room. They get dressed. They put the spacesuits on and camp out here to get rid of the nitrogen in their blood, etc. So this is a place to prepare. All materials are there, and then once people are ready, they go into the airlock, and in the airlock there is the hatch, and from there you can go outside. Now the spacesuits are mini spaceships with their own supply of oxygen, with their own radio, even own propulsion in case of need. And of course it's a pressurized hull. The spacesuits are very interesting mini spaceships. So there the airlock and all the equipment. So this hatch will close, and then people can go outside from that airlock to the rest of the station. We also have, of course, the possibility to go outside from the Russian segment, and that we will see later. So the Russians have different spacesuits. So we float. Let's go to the cellar, and we had visiting modules going with the space shuttle. These were the MPLMs, and now we have one permanently attached. And this is our cellar, and here we have a lot of stuff. So let's float down. This is like diving in a cave, and that's why we put this up here, because it reminds us a bit of nature. These are the normal straps that are around food containers, but we made this our little underwater garden with. It's like diving off the coast of Los Angeles. You know, you feel like a sea lion here, floating through the kelp. So this is a place where we stow a lot of things. We have food here, but also trash. You know, old clothes, expired food, equipment that we don't use anymore. We stow that there until it gets loaded in a cargo ship, and then it burns up in the atmosphere. So it's a difficult place to orient yourself, because you know it all looks the same, and sometimes you don't know what is left and right and up and down anymore. Interesting place. And it's now called the PMM. So it's the pressurized, I don't know, actually the second M means module, the pressurized something module. Now you come out of it, and then you think, okay, where am I now? Because you have to orient yourself. Okay, what was up and down, and oh yeah, there's the airlock. So the one we didn't have yet is on this side, and that is the node 1, node 3, and that's an interesting module. We can go there later, because I like to show you also the outside, and that is something nice for the end. So if we
I'll be out in just a minute, Andre.
That's okay. And so from this side, this is the end of the USOS. So the US part. So we go now to the Russian part of the space station, and we go first through the docking port. Say the docking between the first Russian part and the first US part, and that is the PMM. And it has a certain shape. It had to do with the docking of the space shuttle. So it goes a bit like a tube. And here we save, if we have our clothes, our washing cloths, dry wipes, white wipes, trousers, whatever you can think of, your personal hygiene stuff, toothbrushes, it's all here. So it's always an interesting place to fly through. And so follow me, and we go to the Russian segment. Immediately there is a different sound, there's more noise, different colors, different style, docking mechanisms are different, so this is the front part of the FGB. The FGB was the first module that was launched, and so you see all these tubes here, so this is for ventilation between the US segment and the Russian segment. You see the hatches here. We see on all the hatches we see this kind of sensors. So these sense the pressure. If there is a pressure loss somewhere, there will be an airflow, and this airflow will be registered. And this way we can see on the computers where the leak probably is. So everywhere we see these valves for closing the system, controlling the pressure. We see emergency equipment, we have gas masks, we have fire extinguishers, cable cutters and things like that. All on strategic places. And of course communication equipment here on this side. So with this we can communicate with the ground. It's a bit more narrow, so let's go through the FGB. The FGB is one of the places where we first had our hygiene station. So this was here and is still in use with the Russians. So this was before all the other stuff. We had this part here. The FGB is half full with equipment. So this is for the toilet. We have also a piece of equipment of a treadmill, for example. Food boxes, so this is a lot used for storage. Also behind this cupboard there's a lot of equipment for the whole station. So this is a storage module. The first one, pretty old. What's interesting with the Russian modules is that they have Velcro all over the place. So the whole wall is Velcro. I like that personally because you can always stick something to it. Let's continue. So, floating through here, we have ammonia respirators. So for everybody, personal. And this is in case of an ammonia leak, because that will be in the US segment. So we immediately get out of there, close the hatches, and then we put on masks, and then we can measure if there is indeed a high concentration of ammonia. Very unlikely, but we are prepared to be safe for that. So from the FGB, functional cargo block, or SARIA, we continue to the SM, which is the bridge of the ship. So the surface module. So here we are in the service module, and this is where the space station is, say, controlled with engines. This is the heart of the Russian part of the space station, and you see it's very much used with lots of cameras, lots of stuff, lots of computers. An important thing for safety is this. These are the manipulators, so here we can see the pressure independent of any electronics or whatsoever. This is the pure pressure that we see here. on this place the people can control the progress. We control the ATV, so this is a place for visiting cargo ships for the Russian part. You see here the laptops, and we have a lot of windows. Here on the floor of the SM there's a lot of different windows for taking pictures at night, so you prevent reflections, so you have these kind of things. And also here, bungees everywhere to stick your feet under. This is a device to measure your mass, your body mass, because we don't have weight, but we still have mass, and we can measure that with this device. Talking about cameras, so we can take pictures of pretty much pretty small details actually. We have here, for example, also procedure books. So if it's not electronic, we for the Russian systems we have all the procedure books here. Here's the M radio. So with this we can talk with schools and amateur radio stations. Here we have the medical rec, the Russian medical rec for their experiments. So we don't use that so much. And that was the small part. Here we have the big part of the SM. And here we can get water from the system with a pump, and you get drinking water. Also a food warmer box we have here, and all kind of equipment. For, of course, the communication equipment to talk with the ground. So these are the communication panels that we have in the Russian segment. So this is where we train a lot for in Star City. This side, the dinner table. Here, part of it is moved to Note 1, and this is the original part. And here we have the food warmer for cans. You put our food in, you heat it up. This is where you trash your food. So this is very good bags for moist food and leftovers. This is where you get your water. So you connect a bag here and put the handle down, and then you push there how many milliliters you want, and then you have your soup or your tea or whatsoever. This is the treadmill from the Russian side. Of course, you connect yourself with bungees so you don't float away. Two cayutas, which I mentioned already. There's 4 in Note 2, and there's 2 here. So this is where 2 of the Russian cosmonauts sleep. We continue here, because here's the Russian toilet. Later on we will see the US toilet, but this is the Russian toilet. And the Russian toilet, well, it's the same actually as the American one, because it's the same device. This is for urine. Urine is used to make water again, so drinking water or technical water. So we use the urine, and the solid waste goes in these containers, and when they're full they are replaced, and finally that burns up in the atmosphere. Now for half a year there is a European visitor, which is the automated transfer vehicle, and this is connected on the back side of the space station. So this is the ATV number 3, and it brings a lot of cargo, but also water, for example, air, oxygen that's pumped to the space station. So it provides the space station with a lot of consumables, cargo, air, water, but also fuel. Behind here is the engine part. So this is pressurized, and behind this wall is the unpressurized section of ATV, and there, for example, we have the fuel tanks, because the fuel, which is also part of the transporter, but the fuel is used for boosting. So we have progress, the Russian cargo ship for fueling the engines of the space station and for boosting. But ATV has a great position to put the space station in a higher orbit, because we lose a bit of altitude every time. So here we are stowing it now with things we don't need anymore, be it foam, be it trash, and be it old pieces of equipment. And when it's full, after half a year, it disappears. So we fly back now and we go to see some side modules. By the way, on the hatches you see some clamps for extra security, and also again these flow meters. This is on top of the space station. So the space station is on top. So we're looking up now. And yeah, it's full, even with the spacesuit for Russian spacewalks. You see here towels, you see everywhere, you see clothing and towels dry, because we need all the humidity, because we recycle the water. So there's things like trash, parts for experiments, equipment, and attached to it is a Soyuz. So we have one Soyuz on top and one Soyuz on the bottom of the space station. So this is the Soyuz from Joe, Gennady, and Sergei, and we will later on see the Soyuz from the 3M from the Don and Alec and me. Here you see how the docking mechanism works a bit. So this is the hatch from the Soyuz. On the front you have this probe that is normally before docking extended. This probe gets into contact with this. Let's put the light on. Okay. This is the part from the station. So the probe gets into this hole and then pulls itself in, and once it's fixed, then these two sides are attached to each other. There are big hooks, they grab each other and close, and then there's a good fix, and then the inside hatch can open. So this one's open and this one opens this way, and people can get in. So this is how the Russian docking mechanism works, and also for the ATV, by the way. So that's the same principle. Also here, emergency equipment, pressure sensors and things like that. So from the top we go to the other side. It's hard to follow. This is the SO. So this is the docking compartment for the Russian side. So from here, spacewalks are done. So here we see two spacesuits or lots. They're a bit different. Of course, the principle is the same, but different design than the US spacesuits. Two windows. So from here you can also see planet Earth. And so these hatches will then, one of these hatches goes open for a Russian spacewalk. On this docking module, we have a Progress. So this is the Russian cargo ship, the Progress. So we have ATV, you can have Dragon, HCV, and the Russian one is the Progress. And this is how the Progress looks inside. So this is now used to stow cargo and now to stow trash, and then it burns up. always nice if a progress ship is coming, because it brings all kind of fresh fruit, for example. So we're always waiting for a progress. Go back down or up. What was it? So we go back to the FGB, and depends on how you look at it. So now I'm flying backwards, over the ceiling, down. Well, here we are at the beginning of the Russian, at the FGB, and there's the US segment, and here is MIM-1, and on that one, so this is down from the station, is our Soyuz dock. So let's go there, we can have a look in the Soyuz. So here we are in the BO. So this is the living module, this the little module on top of the landing capsule, and so this is where we spent 2 days on our way to the station and half a day on our way back. Well, not in here anymore. This is a place to stow our spacesuits, for example. So let's see. This is done. Then we have my spacesuit. So it's waiting for me, and when it's time to return, we get in here, we close the hatch, this hatch here, and then we prepare. So here also this mechanism what I talked about, so this hatch is closed, and then we go down into the Soyuz landing capsule, and this is pretty tight. So, this is the seat of the commander where I'm sitting. This is the hatch, so the hatch closes like this. And then after we enter the atmosphere, about 100 kilometers, 140 kilometers, we separate, and 140 kilometers we separate from the living module and the engine module, which is below us, and only this part with 3 persons sitting here, only this part has a heat shield, and that comes down through the atmosphere. So this will be the outside hatch. So once we land, people open this hatch, and then or we do it ourselves, and then we can get out again. I will try to get to my seat here to see how much we can still see that. So I will be on the left seat. It's tight if you're used to all this station roomy place, then this is tight. I close the hatch for a moment to move over. So here I'm sitting. I have my procedure books here, so whenever it's needed we can land. The headset, you have to imagine we do this in our spacesuit, so it's going to be very tight. And so all the equipment is here. So you can imagine that you cannot bring much back. So it's good that we have Dragon nowadays, so we can also bring samples from experiments back, for example. Will you give me the camera? So I'll show a little bit how it looks like inside. Okay. So here we have the dashboard and the buttons to use, important valves, little window. Okay, and on the other side there's the seats. Okay. Okay, go back to the PMA, to the US segment. So we're back in the US segment here, coming from the Soyuz, which is down, to the Mimadine PMA back in node 1 with all the connections. And one module we didn't see yet, and I leave this for the end because it has also the cupola. And that is node 3. Node 3 is very interesting from an orientation point of view. Because, well, we have the feeling that we're up right now. So we're floating inside here. And well, looks okay. That's the toilet. But the first thing is already strange that my shoes, for example, are here on the ceiling. And why do I need shoes in space? Well, I want to run. So the running, so it is a harness which you connect to what? To the treadmill. The treadmill is 90 degrees. So this is the treadmill. So this is already a 90-degree change. So you take your harness and you fix that to this thing, bungees. So you can stay on one place and you can really run, otherwise you float off, of course. So then you run on this treadmill, and here you can watch a movie, here you can get your protocol, what you have to run. Every day it's a bit different. And so this is how we do our running. Now, if you turn around, how I see it, then the whole module looks different, because now all of a sudden the toilet is here on the floor. So the whole thing looks different. This is a different place. If I run here, I have a totally different view than if I do an experiment with this device, or experiment where I measure the water with. So it looks again totally different. And that is all of a sudden the floor, and I'm working upside down. Now, if we are the normal way again, then we get to the next thing of this great node, and that is the toilet. So this is, like I said, like the Russian toilet. Of course, there's another bit of another layout, but the toilet it's in principle the same. There's also, by the way, a lot of electronics for it, because behind all the boards we have all the equipment to get the water in all the systems to clean it. Now, under this floor, I can show you a little bit, for example, how it looks like and how the water is cleaned. Let's open this a little bit, so they can have a little look on the equipment that is used for cleaning the water. For example, we have the big tanks here, and so we connect cables, and sometimes we take the tanks out and put other tanks in, or and now we have nowadays new tanks which can be reused. So it's becoming more and more recycling, and also the equipment can be reused now. So that's good. Very interesting. The water is then purified, and like I said, we use also the water, for example, to make oxygen out. And that's behind this track, for example, and this is the port where the oxygen comes from. So we use the water to make oxygen. So what's left over, you have oxygen and you have hydrogen. The hydrogen would normally be thrown into space, but we can also use the hydrogen because the air that we breathe out has carbon dioxide, and if you combine the hydrogen with the carbon dioxide, you can have water again, so you get your water back. And we have still methane left, but maybe I can have a little burner next time or something, and you can even use the methane for future. So we are really recycling a lot of water, which is important because every ounce, every kilogram costs a lot of money to bring up. So we have this is a hygiene place. We have stuff here to wash. We can use the toilet here. We have no rinse shampoo, so we don't have to use a lot of water to wash. We don't have a shower. Then we get to the other interesting exercise device, which is ARED, and this is for weightlifting. Well, we don't have weights, so we use vacuum cylinders. But you see, it's upside down again. So this is how we see it if we are on it, and so we turn around, and this is the place where we stand on. So it's really interesting module with all the orientation. So this is where we stand. We can do the weightlifting here with this bar. We have all kind of little bench, a place for heel racing, a little bar. So it's a great device. We can train our arms if we connect another piece bar on this hook, and then we can train our arms. And we do this with vacuum cylinders. So we have two big cylinders here, so there's no weight, but we pull vacuum, and of course this creates a lot of force, and this is how we train our muscles. And not only our muscles, to put pressure on the bones is a very important aspect. So we prevent, or at least prevent total bone loss, which you have in space. Because yeah, if you're floating in half a year, you get brittle bones in that sense, and so you can lose a percentage of bone density. And with this device, we can do a lot against that. Now, and then the final part, which is the most beautiful thing of the station for your free time, but also for work with robotics or visiting spaceships, is the cupola. And it's pointed downwards, but for us it's upwards. And this is a fantastic place where we have 360 degrees view of the planet. You see, you will see a lot of cameras here, because you can imagine that it's nice to take pictures and to film our beautiful place. So we open some shutters because we want to protect the windows as much as possible from the outside and possible debris, and then we can have a fantastic view. So here we see our Soyuz, and behind it the Progress that we just visited both. And if you look down, you see the Russian segment, and on the end you see the automated transfer vehicle at the very end, where we also were. If we turn it around, we see the PMM, which is the cellar that we saw, and here we see the front of the space station with left Columbus, here the US lab in the middle, and on the other side we see the GEM, right? The external platform, and here we see part of the truss with the big solar panels. And if you look straight up or down, and I think we are looking yes at the Amazon, great view. Okay, so we go down from cupola and then we finish our tour. I hope you liked it. It's a great space station, beautiful, a lot of different things to show, and it's great to float around here, have things floating around you, and a beautiful view. So I hope you liked the tour. I hope it's a bit clear. Even I get confused sometimes, so yeah, it's an interesting place.
Good morning and welcome to Mission Control Houston and the International Space Station update. On board the International Space Station, the Expedition 31 crew, Commander Oleg Kononenko and U.S. flight engineers Don Pettit and Joe Akava, as well as European flight engineer Andrei Kuipers and Russian flight engineers Gennady Padalka and Sergei Revin, are now more than halfway through their day, which started at 1 a.m. Central Time. Flight engineer Don Pettit is about halfway through a 4-hour-long project that he's working on with the amine swing bed experiment that's aimed at determining whether a vacuum-regenerated amine system can effectively remove carbon dioxide from the station's air. Its control unit power handler circuit board has blown a fuse, and Pettit is repairing that today by soldering a new fuse into place. Flight engineer Joe Akava is participating again in the integrated cardiovascular experiment and the Pro-K diet experiment. That first looks at the body's reaction to being in space, particularly its cardiovascular system's reaction. And the second is an experiment that looks at whether dietary countermeasures will help lessen the bone loss that astronauts often experience during long-duration missions. Flight engineer Andrei Kuipers has finally wrapped up his work with a Ryute repair that he and Pettit have been working on for the past week. That's a Japanese experiment rack in the Kibo laboratory, and its power supply for its image processing unit has had a short circuit several months ago. Pettit and Kuipers have taken turns over the past several days working on that repair, and Kuipers installed the newly repaired unit back into the Ryute rack yesterday, and today hooked the rack's hoses and power cables back up to get it up and running. Kuipers also took some time out today of his task to talk with Dutch broadcasters from Amsterdam in his hometown and answer questions about life on the space station. On the Russian side of the station, Commander Oleg Kononenko was also working on science experiments, in particular the identification experiment, which is aimed at identifying sources of vibration that disrupt the microgravity conditions on the space station. And flight engineer Gennady Padalka was again working on the Kolonovsky crystal experiment, which studies the effect of microgravity on charged particles in a magnetic field. Kononenko, Kuipers, and Pettit have just a little more time left to fit in their work on the space station. They've been at the station since December, and with 169 days in space and 167 at the space station, they're coming up on the end of their stay and will be returning to Earth on July 1st. Their crewmates, Akava, Padalka, and Revin, still have most of their mission in front of them. They only arrived at the station last month and have now spent 23 days in space, 21 at the space station. They're going to be staying on board the station until September. A couple of weeks after their crewmates leave, Akava, Padalka, and Revin are going to be joined by what will then be the rest of the Expedition 32 crew. That's Suni Williams, Yuri Malenchenko, and Aki Hoshide. Those three are scheduled to launch from Baikonur on July 15th, and they are actually already in Russia preparing for their departure. Today, they were at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center in Star City, taking part in a Russian segment simulation. Hi, welcome to Mission Control Center here in Houston, where we have Mario Runco with us, one of our astronauts who also works with a bunch of different projects here on the ground as well, including he's been real involved lately with the Transit of Venus experience that just took place earlier this week, and I think y'all learned a little bit about it. But before we get started with your questions, we're here in the Mission Control Center. This is the International Space Station Flight Control Room, and this is where all the people who control the space station from the ground sit and work. I mean, you can probably see in the background the map that tracks the International Space Station, and around the room we've got all the different positions that actually control the systems on board. So we look forward to hearing your questions.
Marvin, I was wondering, could you would it be possible to send a rover to fix one of the rovers that got crashed?
I presume, Marvin, you mean on Mars, and at the current time, present technology would probably not permit that in terms of being able to do that sort of repair. It might not be cost effective to do so, whereas sending another rover to replace it might be a better option than to repair one that is there. Having said that, if the repair is simple enough, and we did send another rover for more experimentation and more exploration, it probably would be in a different area. But if it were in the same area and the repair were simple enough, something like pulling out a part and replacing it that might be plug-in, then I would say it might be possible.
And maybe y'all have heard about the Curiosity rover that's going to be landing on Mars in August, and won't be going to get the other rover, but hopefully we'll find out some cool new stuff from it.
Do you want us to ask questions now, or do you want to speak for a little bit and then have us ask questions?
Please go ahead and ask your questions.
Yeah, let's give the students time to all ask their questions.
Hi, this is Garrett. I was wondering if you have plants up there and if you can make them grow really big.
Well, Garrett, you have asked a question that is very basic to science. That is a super question. As a matter of fact, we have been experimenting with plants in space for quite some time. We used to do on the space shuttle plant experiments, but the drawback to doing them on the space shuttle was the space shuttle only stayed in space for about 14 days. And as you probably know, 14 days is not a long time to grow a plant. However, on the International Space Station, we do have additional experiments with plant growth, and a lot of the curiosity as to the plants and how they behave in microgravity are related to, since there's no up or down, which way will they grow? How do they respond to light? Do they respond to the light differently than on the ground? Is there a change in the plant itself when it is growing? So, and I would guess, even though we haven't grown a plant very large because we have to stay inside, so essentially any plants we do grow are house plants, and the house is only so much size, is if I would think because of the lack of gravity, the plants potentially could grow very large.
Maybe y'all have heard about the blog that one of the astronauts on the space station is writing right now, Don Pettit. He's written one called The Diary of a Zucchini, and you can find that online at blogs.nasa.gov. So you might check into that and see what he has to say about the plants he's been growing in space.
My name is Ren. And how big are those solar panels?
That's a good question. I don't know exact dimensions on the solar panels, but I would say that the length of them are probably about half a football field long, and they are probably, I would guess, each in width about 20, 30 feet.
Sounds about right.
This is Tate, and has Opportunity picked up any new information?
Actually, Opportunity is, let's see now, help me out here, because we've got Opportunity and Spirit, and one of those is not functional at this point in time. I believe it's right. Spirit is not operational. So the twin rovers on Mars have been there for many years, well, for several years now, and they have performed better than we have expected, because I think the original mission was only like 45, 50 days. They have picked up new information. Both rovers have, Opportunity particularly, because it's still operational. And that is why we have the Mars Science Laboratory, the Curiosity rover, on its way to Mars now in August, because of the discoveries that made us even more curious about some of the things we were observing with Opportunity on Mars, and we're trying to go and discover those. We found water. We found minerals that are somewhat related to biologics, and so that is a tantalizing elevation of the information that makes us believe that there might have been life on Mars at one point in its history. So to be able to go there and actually discover that would be a fantastic discovery.
My name is Trey, and what do they make the spacesuits out of?
You mean the space suits or the space chutes as in parachute? I didn't quite understand your question.
Suits.
Suits, okay. The space suits are made of several layers, okay. The outer layer is basically a plastic shell on the upper torso and around the waist, and there are metal parts to it as well, and that helps contain the pressure. Now, outside of that, there's a rubber bladder that contains the air, or excuse me, inside of that, there's a rubber bladder that contains the air, and outside of that, there's a Nomex material that acts as a micrometeoroid, or essentially a protection against the small particles in space so that it doesn't puncture the suit. And it also has thermal protection on the outside in that same material. There's a blanket, like a aluminum colored kind of blanket underneath the Nomex that is sort of like a radiative barrier that what you might put in your attic.
Mario, why do you need the thermal protection on a spacesuit?
Good question. The thermal protection is such that when you're in orbit around the Earth, most of the time you go behind the Earth, away from the sun, in the shadow of the Earth. So that would be an eclipse to the person who's doing the spacewalk because the Earth blocks the sun. And when you're on the backside of the Earth, you don't have any of the sunlight, and it gets very, very cold, down to minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit or thereabouts. And then when you're in the sun, the temperature rises to about that much, to plus 250. So you got a 400 to 500 degree temperature range with which you're dealing. And human beings and creatures on Earth like to stay around 70 degrees Fahrenheit. So to keep us comfortable and alive, you need to have the thermal protection.
Okay, my name is Courtney, and what kind of food do you guys eat on the space station, and how do you eat it?
Okay, what kind of food? There's a variety of different kinds of foods. There's a limited variety of fresh foods when a spacecraft first gets up and docks with the space station. There's treats on board, if you will. There might be some fresh fruits, some fresh cookies, things like that, so that you're familiar with. The other food comes in a kind of varieties. There's rehydratable foods. You might know them as freeze-dried. They're not exactly freeze-dried, but the water is removed from them, and then we have to add the water back in, heat them up, and they come in lots of varieties. Turkey tetrazzini, there's chicken soups, there's burgers and stuff like that. So, and then there's another variety that comes from the military, if you will. They're the meals ready to eat, the same food that the troops would use in the field when they are on bivouac, if you will. And those foods are thermostabilized, they're put in pouches, and they come in a variety of different flavors. Now, the thing about the foods is each astronaut generally samples the menu. They pick what they like. And of course, you're not going to eat things you don't like, except there's a little part of the story here. And you prepare your menus and you plan your menus ahead for the time you're going to be on board. So generally the food are things that you generally like. However, because of nutritional factors, they'll look at your menu and what you've picked, and if you're deficient in something over the long term, potassium or vitamin E or whatever it might be, they will recommend and add to your diet things that will contain those nutrients for you, and of course you'll pick the ones that you prefer the most for that contain those nutrients.
I heard that you can't, or you don't get to eat a whole lot of bread in space. Is that right?
Well, bread in space is problematic. First of all, bread has a short shelf life, and it gets very dry. For some reason or other, it doesn't last even as long as it does down here if you just left it on the counter or in the bread box. What we prefer in space is the alternative to bread are tortillas, because two reasons. One is they seem to keep longer, and they're not as flaky. When you have bread, it tends to crumble and it flies all over the place and it gets pretty messy. Whereas, if, for example, if I wanted to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, I could spread the peanut butter on a tortilla, and the tortilla is much tougher and holds together better, and it will contain and hold the jelly and the peanut butter. So we
you don't
prefer
get as many
tortillas.
crumbs floating around
Right,
in space, huh?
right. And then we have to be like fish and start eating the crumbs like a fish in a tank eating its food.
That sounds fun enough.
I'm Marvin, and we watched a short video, and it didn't show where they slept. Do they like sleep in beds or just like strap down and float?
Good question. Actually, on the I'll talk about how they sleep on the ISS, and then you could extrapolate to other vehicles like the space shuttle or smaller vehicles like the Soyuz, or even some of the future vehicles like Orion. Each crew member has a sleep station. Think of the sleep station as a phone booth, a large phone booth, a little bit shorter than a phone booth because we're not as tall as the phone booth, and a little bit wider to give more room to turn around in. And each crew member has his personal items in there, pictures of his family, the books he might want to read, his laptop, the videos he might want to watch on his laptop, and things like that. And inside that compartment, they usually have, for lack of a better term, it's a sleep restraint or a sleeping bag. And the purpose of the sleeping bag is so that you're restrained somewhat and you're not floating around, in this case within the compartment, within the phone booth. And if you're sleeping and you're actually floating around and you bump into something, that will wake you up, and you don't want that to happen. So generally speaking, most crew members crawl inside the sleep restraint, zip it up. Like I said, it's not unlike a sleeping bag, and that sleeping bag is attached to one wall or the other of the sleeping compartment of the phone booth, and that's how they sleep.
Hi, this is Griffin. What happens if something goes wrong while an astronaut is out in space working on the space station?
Okay, that's a good question, and I'm gonna ask you when you say something goes wrong, because many things can go wrong. So what are you thinking right now in terms of something going wrong? A problem with the suit, a problem with the space station, a problem with communications? I mean, there's a lot of things I can answer, but I want to tailor the question to what you're thinking.
Well, like something goes wrong with the suit, like they can't breathe, or they drift too far away from the space station. Okay,
fair enough. The suit is designed, at least the U.S.-made extravehicular mobility units, that we call them EMUs, to go EVA. That's a mouthful of letters, but the suit is designed. It has about 8 hours, more or less, depending upon how heavily you breathe and how much work activity you're doing, of oxygen and water. Remember, we talked about the cooling, so the water is there to cool you in the suit. And how that's done, let me get to that for a minute. We wear a set of full-length long johns, if you will, that cover the entire body with the skin. And you might have seen this in the race car industry, where this garment has tubes running through it all over the body, and through those tubes the water is circulated, and so it's actually cooler water to help remove the heat from the body. Okay, so that's how we stay cool, and the oxygen and we use pure oxygen in the suit, and the oxygen is designed to last 8 hours. Now, if there's a hole in the suit, depending upon the size of the hole, if the hole gets too big, then I would say all bets are off. But generally speaking, that's a very, very, very low probability. Chances are you might get a hole in the suit, a slit in your glove, a micrometeoroid puncture that would be like a pinhole or even a pencil hole into the suit. If that happens, the oxygen system, the breathing system, can supply the oxygen to the suit to keep it pressurized sufficiently to keep you alive and give you enough time to get back inside. If this happens at the end of the EVA where you're low on oxygen, there's a secondary emergency oxygen pack that you can either manually or it will automatically kick in and give you an additional 30 minutes to get back inside. With relation to the tether, we are tethered to the space station And that tether is a very, very strong fishing line, if you will, that could bring in quite a big fish. So it will hold us to the station even if we tug on the line. But if it does break, we do have if you will, a jet pack. It's called Safer, that we could fly ourselves back to the space station.
NASA likes to have lots of backup plans for just in case something goes wrong.
It wouldn't be fun to float away from the space station or whatever vehicle outside you're outside of.
Hi, this is Kirsten. I was wondering how many hours of exercise do they have to do to keep their muscles and stuff like that?
Well, I think, and I'm not 100% sure because I was a space shuttle astronaut, and the requirements for exercise for us were a little different than the exercises for the space station crew members. They are, of course, long-term, long-duration space flyers. They fly about 6 months at a time in space as opposed to 2 weeks or so. So their exercise protocol, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, that they're exercising for an hour or two every day. And it's up to the crew member. Sometimes if they're not feeling well, they may not feel like exercising that day. It's okay to skip a day or two now and then, but you really want to get the exercise in pretty regularly and not miss it, because with the lack of gravity up there, your body isn't loaded. And just sitting here and you guys sitting in your classroom there, if that's where you are, your heart is working against gravity to pump blood up to your head. And otherwise, all the liquid in your body would go to your feet, and that wouldn't be a good thing, and you'd pass out and all of that. But in the long term, your heart muscle gets weak because it doesn't have to push against that force of gravity, so it's doing less work. Your bones are not being loaded by the weight of your body, and so therefore there's something in our bodies that tells our system that to hold calcium in our bones, and that keeps them strong and very very able to hold the weight of your body up. However, if that goes away, the gravity goes away, and there's no load on your body, there's something inside us that says the body shed that calcium, and the bones start to get brittle, like somebody who's elderly and has osteoporosis. So in order to counteract that, we do the exercises and several different protocols to ensure that when we do come back to Earth, we retain our health and are able to function. There's an initial period of time after we come down that there's an adaptive period to readjust to the sudden onset of gravity, but that passes, and it takes a little longer then to get fully adjusted to life back on Earth. But you really need to exercise to be able to do that.
We have some cool equipment that they can use to do the exercising too. I don't know if y'all thought about it, but how do you lift weights like you do here on the ground when there's no weight in microgravity? So we have some machines that let them lift weights and run even though they're really floating, and exercise back as well.
My name is Jay, and how many times have you been up in space?
That's the easiest question I've had today. Thank you, Jay. I've been in space 3 times. I first flew on mission STS-44 on the shuttle Atlantis, which, by the way, will be now its permanent home is in the Kennedy Space Center at the Visitor Center there. And that was in 1991. My second flight was on the Space Shuttle Endeavour, which will be in California, and it's not quite there yet. They'll be shipping it to California soon. And that was on mission STS-54 in 1993. And my last mission was also on Endeavour. It was STS-77 in 1996. So that was long ago, I guess, from your perspective.
Hi, my name is John, and I wanted to know how many robots or rovers do you guys have on the International Space Station other than R2?
Okay, other than R2, there's some robots called spheres. They're not exactly autonomous robots, but they're actually, let me describe it this way. You've seen Luke Skywalker in Star Wars when he was training to be a Jedi Knight with his lightsaber, and there was the little ball floating around, and he was trying to hit the ball and was not successful initially until he got the training from Yoda. Having said that, there are spheres like that on board that are used for robotic purposes, to hold positions, to carry things around. They are experimental, and they're really not used for anything practical right now, but the hope is that we will be able to do so in the future. Now, if there's other robots besides Robonaut, I'm not exactly sure. There might be.
Probably not what you're thinking of as robots, but we have the robotic arms on the outside of the space station that we use to carry big pieces of equipment from one place to another as we're installing things on the space station. And there's actually 3 of those. There's our big one that we call Canada Arm 2 is the main one, and then there's a robotic arm for the Japanese laboratory Kibo, and there's also an attachment for the Canadarm too.
Dexter.
Right, Dexter, that is used to change out spare parts.
And just to clarify, those are robotic arms, but they're controlled by someone inside. It would be like my being in this room here, and I would be controlling the arm on a backhoe, if you will, that might be outside the room. And so that's why they call it robotics, because it's remotely controlled.
This is Tate, and I was wondering how cold does it get at night in space?
Okay, how cold it gets at night in space. Let's talk about inside for the moment. Inside, the ISS and spacecraft in general is temperature controlled. We have a thermostat just like you have in your house, and you set the temperature, and hopefully the systems control that. Now, when the system breaks, you call the repairman. We have to repair it ourselves in order to maintain the temperature automatically. We like to keep it at around 75 degrees at 50% relative humidity. That's generally a comfortable thing. It might be like 72 degrees Fahrenheit. And we try to, and the systems on board are designed to be able to do that against the temperature extremes outside, which again range, like on the dark side of the Earth. If you're in orbit from Earth, it can get as low as 250, maybe even more. I don't know the exact number, minus 250 degrees Fahrenheit, and as high in the sun, on when you come around the sun side, as high as 250. So there's quite a wide temperature range. Now, for probes that go out into the solar system, they are in the sun all the time. So there's a problem with those, at least initially, for keeping them cool. But as they get farther and farther away from the sun, the effects of the sun are much less, and they can get very cold. You get to Mars. Mars still is relatively in an area away from the sun, in a distance away from the sun that's relatively comfortable. It's cold on Mars, but it can get up to as high as maybe even 15 degrees on the surface in the summer in the tropics on Mars. So it can get comfortable for you and I to be on Mars on the surface. However, you go farther past Mars, we have a spacecraft on its way to Pluto, as a matter of fact. It's called the New Horizons spacecraft, and that spacecraft is already past Jupiter and is on, and I think it's a scheduled arrival at Pluto to take pictures of Pluto for the first time directly. I think it's 2015. And out that far, it's very, very cold. I can't tell you the exact number, but it's in that minus 250 or lower range than what I just described. So keeping that spacecraft warm enough for it to function is quite a challenge. You guys live in South Dakota. It gets very cold there in the winter. It's even a challenge to get your cars started in the morning, and that's just right here on Earth. So you can imagine the challenge for sending a spacecraft out that far in that extreme of a regime of temperature.
Hi, this is Jakota. What kind of schooling do you use to be an astronaut?
Okay, what kind of schooling? Okay, well, I started out the same way you guys are. I was in classrooms much like yourself, and I was, for myself, I was always very inquisitive. I just wanted to learn as much as I could about everything, and you just can't do that. So you have to focus on something to narrow the field a little bit. So I decided after high school, well, I decided before high school that I wanted to do something in science and engineering. And when I got to college, I studied, in my case, earth science, physical, oceanography, and meteorology. So that's my particular background. But generically, astronauts, mainly have technical, scientific, engineering backgrounds, medical backgrounds, because of the problems with keeping people alive and potential medical problems if we go too far away from space and something happens medically. So mostly backgrounds like that. They prefer to have advanced degrees, not required. So that means you can become an astronaut with a bachelor's degree. But a master's degree is desired, and even a doctoral or PhD is even better. Of course, all of the education is not the final bottom line. They also prefer to have people who have some experience, of course, in their fields, and who are good or premier in the fields that they've chosen to be in. So, and then that is generally speaking the science, engineering astronauts. There is also the other side of the coin, where you have pilot astronauts who generally, for example, fly the spacecraft and just recently retired space shuttle that would actually fly the shuttle to the landing, or would fly the capsule down to the ground, or take over automatic control in the event of a malfunction on a computer that was on autopilot. So you do need to have the pilot end of things in here. And the pilots are generally from military backgrounds. Not always. Neil Armstrong was not a military pilot. He was a test pilot, but not a military test pilot. But generally speaking, where you get that kind of flying experiences in the military in high-performance aircraft. And you have to have thousands of hours doing that as well.
Okay, I think that's actually all the questions we're going to have time for this time around, but we really enjoyed talking with you, and I hope you had fun as well. Thanks so much, and this is Mission Control Houston. Good morning, and welcome to Mission Control Houston and the International Space Station Update Hour. We're back inside the International Space Station Flight Control Room at the Mission Control Center in Houston, and Flight Director Paul Dye is again here leading the Orbit 2 team of flight controllers through their shift, with Josh Matthew in the Capcom seat there next to him. On board the International Space Station, the Expedition 31 crew, Commander Oleg Kononenko, U.S. flight engineers Don Pettit and Joe Akaba, European flight engineer Andrei Kuipers, and Russian flight engineers Gennady Podanka and Sergei Revin, aren't slowing down as their week wraps up. They're now more than halfway through a day of experiments and maintenance work, which started at 1 a.m. Central Time. They're currently orbiting 258 miles above the Pacific Ocean, heading south towards the very southern tip of South America, which they'll cross over in the next few minutes. After a busy week of SpaceX activities last week, things have returned to normal operations this week, but that doesn't mean that the crew hasn't been busy. Of course, one of the very unique tasks that the station crew worked on was photographing the transit of Venus on Tuesday. They actually stayed up into their sleep period to take the first photos by humans from space of the event, which occurs only twice a century and won't occur again until 2117. Flight engineer Don Pettit prepared for the event before he even left Earth, arranging to take up some special filters that he needed in order to be able to capture the planet Venus crossing between us and the sun on film. He took several hundred pictures over the course of the 7-hour transit, many of which are now available online at venustransit.nasa.gov. Again, that is venustransit.nasa.gov. The week hasn't lacked for science experiments on board the space station either. Over the course of the week, the crew has worked on quite a variety, and they'll add a couple more into the mix today. Flight engineers Joe Akaba and Don Pettit each spent some time on the BASS experiment, which stands for Burning and Suppression of Solids. That experiment tests the hypothesis that, all other things being equal, materials in microgravity burn as well or better than they would in gravity. It's a video here of Pettit working in the Columbus laboratory at the microgravity science glove box on that experiment. Akaba, Pettit, and Andrei Kuipers all spent some time this week performing runs of the VO2 max experiment on various days. That documents changes in the crew members' maximum oxygen uptake while they're in space. And Akaba also worked with a couple of other experiments aimed at monitoring crew health and fitness while away from Earth: the integrated cardiovascular experiment and the Pro-K diet experiment. The First, there monitors changes in the crew's cardiovascular health during and after their time in space. And the second is aimed at determining whether special diets could be used as an easy way to prevent bone loss in space. Kuipers and Pettit swapped off throughout the week on a long maintenance project they undertook with the Japanese Ryute rack. That rack houses experiments that investigate fluid physics phenomena in microgravity, measure changes in morphology and growth conditions of crystals, and manipulates temperatures for proteins. Kuipers and Pettit have been working all week to repair its image processing unit's power supply, and they successfully wrapped up that work yesterday. Pettit has also been working for the past 3 days on the amine swing bed experiment. That experiment's working to determine whether a vacuum-regenerated amine system can effectively remove carbon dioxide from the station's air. But its control power unit handler circuit board has blown a fuse that Pettit has been working to replace, and he has now actually wrapped up that work for the day as well. Today, Pettit will be working on an experiment called Sprint, which evaluates the use of high-intensity, low-volume exercise to minimize loss of muscle, bone, and cardiovascular function during long stays in space. And Kuipers is working with the Altea Shield project. Altea stands for Anomalous Long-Term Effects in Astronauts' Central Nervous System. And this is a portion of the experiment aimed at better understanding the interaction between cosmic rays and brain function, as well as providing an assessment of the radiation environment inside the space station. Kononenko, Kuipers, and Pettit have just a little more time to fit in their work on the space station. They've been at the station since December, and with 170 days in space and 160 days at the space station, they're coming up now on the end of their stay. They'll be returning to Earth on July 1st. Their crewmates, Akaba, Padaka, and Revan, will have most of their missions still in front of them. They only arrived at the station last month and have now spent 24 days in space and 22 at the station, and they'll be there until September. A couple of weeks after their crewmates leave, Akaba, Padaka, and Revan are going to be joined by what will then be the rest of the Expedition 32 crew, Sonny Williams, Yuri Malenchenko, and Aki Hoshide. Those three are scheduled to launch from Baikonur on July 15th, and they're already in Russia preparing for their departure. Today they were at the Gagarin Cosmonaut Training Center in Star City reviewing flight plans and procedures with Russian specialists. That's what's been going on in space this week, and this is Mission Control Houston.
Ladies and gentlemen, you are in for a treat.
NASA television helped observe the last transit of Venus we'll see here on Earth until 2117 by showcasing live streaming websites the world over, including observations made by scientists in Central Australia.
There are just a few clouds in the sky, and we are set up for an absolutely gorgeous first and second contact.
And by the NASA EDGE team, stationed atop the Mauna Kea Observatory in Hawaii.
I'm not gonna look until I put my blinders down. Yes. And now, well, of course, now I can't see anything.
Scientists at NASA headquarters also provided information and insight about this rare yet predictable celestial phenomenon that has captivated humankind for millennia.
From a perspective of wanting to know more about our solar system, here's an occurrence like an eclipse that's very rare, and of course it attracts our natural interest in looking at these wandering objects and where they go, and in this case Venus is going to cross in front of the sun.
If I could actually dream 105 years, 117 years from now, I wouldn't think about the transit of Venus. What do you think about transit of Earth as seen from Mars?
And NASA helped provide some unique images. This is how the transit appeared to astronaut Don Pettit from his vantage point on board the International Space Station. And NASA's Solar Dynamics Observatory captured the entire transit in stunning greater than HD resolution. Several NASA centers hosted public transit viewing parties. At the Ames Research Center, close to 6,000 people came to watch the sky and broadcast, plus ask questions of Kepler mission and planetary scientists. No matter where they were, those who witnessed the transit were treated to a last-in-our-lifetime event.
Hi, I'm Gaye Hill at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Pasadena, California. About a half dozen of our JPLers have brought in their own personal telescopes equipped with solar filters so they can share this once-in-a-lifetime event with some of their coworkers and also people who live in the neighborhood.
I saw the sun, but I saw this tiny black dot, but I couldn't say it at first, but then I looked closer, and then I saw the tiny black dot, and I knew that was Venus.
What surprised me about it most was the fact that I guess that I was able to see it in my lifetime.
What are you going to do, tell your grandkids about this?
Assuming I have any.
It's really cool. You can see it through, and if you can look closely, there's like a really, really extremely tiny black dot, which is Venus.
If you missed this one, that's okay. There's another one coming. Unfortunately, it's 105 years away. So you can understand why these kids are stoked that they just witnessed something that happens just once in a lifetime.
As NASA joined the world to witness the Venus transit, officials at the Glenn Research Center hosted media representatives to learn about and see some of the capabilities developed to pave the way for future robotic missions to Venus. The event began in a lab where engineers rapidly create various space exploration concepts, some of which involve flying in the Venus sky. Glenn researchers summarized Glenn's capabilities for future Venus missions and gave a briefing on what a Venus rover could look like. They also talked about their excitement in observing the Venus transit and working with scientists around the world to better understand what happens on Venus and what that may mean for us here on Earth.
The climate models that we currently use on Earth only have Earth as a set of data to validate. Venus will provide a new set of validation that will allow us to improve our weather prediction capabilities.
Reporters also toured Glenn's new extreme environment rig that will simulate harsh environments of planets like Venus. This rig is the largest of its kind in the world.
This extreme environments rig truly is an extreme environments rig. It can handle harsh, high pressure, high temperature, but also the conditions such as on Titan, where it's cold and yet pressurized, and some of the new planets that are being discovered, such as exoplanets that are a little larger than Earth, but have very similar conditions to Venus.
One of the areas that we're working is a seismometer that can measure the vibrations on the Venus surface. This seismometer is meant to be able to withstand harsh environments of Venus and actually operate on the Venus surface.
A little more than a month after arriving at New York's JFK Airport atop a NASA 747 shuttle carrier aircraft, Space Shuttle Enterprise concluded its voyage when NASA's first space shuttle made its much-anticipated arrival by way of barge on the Hudson River to its new home, the Intrepid Sea, Air, and Space Museum. Enterprise will be on exhibit to the public beginning July 19th in a temporary climate-controlled pavilion. Intrepid continues work on a permanent exhibit facility to showcase Enterprise and enhance the museum's space-related exhibits and education curriculum.
This long tube shape may not look like a spacecraft to most people, but something like it may someday take instruments to Mars or return cargo to Earth. Packed into its restraining bag is ERVI-3, the inflatable reentry vehicle experiment, developed at NASA's Langley Research Center in Hampton, Virginia. It's designed to demonstrate that inflatable spacecraft are feasible.
It's very challenging to develop an inflatable spacecraft because you have to use materials that do not mind being packed down into a small volume for launch and then unfolded up to their full size. So we use fabrics, whereas a traditional rigid heat shield would be more of a solid material that doesn't fold.
ERVI-3 is scheduled to launch from a sounding rocket at Wallops Flight Facility, also in Virginia, much like its predecessor ERVI-2 did in 2009. But first, the hardware and software has had to go through a series of tests. One of the last destinations before flight, NASA Langley's Transonic Dynamics Tunnel, or TDT, to check out the whole system, inflation and all.
We were using the TDT for a vacuum chamber, and what we do is actually bring it down to low pressure, just like it'll see during reentry, to make sure that this thing's going to inflate properly During the test, we had the pyro initiators, which are little cutters that they don't explode or anything, they just cut the strings. They initiated, the bag started to unzip. It actually paused, so we all got excited for a minute, and then it just paused a second and let go, and the rest of the bag opened up, the inflatable came out.
That was much to the relief of the engineers, who thoroughly checked the IRV-3 afterwards. Also performing well during the test, the thermal blanket, which will protect the inflatable from the forces and heat of atmospheric entry. Now the team can only hope everything works just as flawlessly later this year, in space.
When I was 12 years old, I decided I was going to be a writer.
The NASA family mourns the passing of Ray Bradbury, one of our era's greatest and most noted science fiction fantasy writers. As the author of such classic works as The Martian Chronicles, The Illustrated Man, and Fahrenheit 451, Bradbury influenced a generation of young men and women who dared to dream of making science fiction science fact.
The future of mankind depends upon space travel, and we'll get away from war. If we stay on Earth, we'll go on having wars. But if we go to the moon and Mars, we'll bind ourselves together into one single race, one color, and go into space and live forever.
Ray Bradbury was 91. 1 year ago, on June 10, 2011, NASA's Age of Aquarius dawned with the launch of an international satellite carrying the Aquarius Observatory from California's Vandenberg Air Force Base. Aquarius was designed to take NASA's first space-based measurements of the salinity, or saltiness, of Earth's oceans to further our understanding of the global water cycle and improve climate forecasts. Aquarius was built by the Jet Propulsion Lab and the Goddard Space Flight Center. And 45 years ago, on June 14, 1967, the Mariner 5 spacecraft was launched by an Atlas Agena D rocket from Cape Canaveral Air Force Station towards the planet Venus. Making its flyby on October 19th of that year with instruments more sensitive than its predecessor Mariner 2, Mariner 5 shed new light on the hot, cloud-covered planet and on conditions in interplanetary space. Its operations ended in November of 1967. Mariner 5 remains in orbit around the Sun.
In summer 2012, Kounotori is about to embark on its third expedition to space. Kounotori is a Japanese-developed unmanned, large-scale spaceship used to transport cargo. It will journey to the International Space Station, located at an altitude of approximately 400 kilometers above Earth. Including the Japanese experiment module, Kibo, the ISS consists of various research and experiment facilities from the United States, Russia, Europe, and Canada. Astronauts stay on the ISS long-term to perform various scientific experiments in fields of materials and life sciences under distinctive space conditions, contributing to the advancement of science and technology. Transporting and supplying research equipment, food, water, daily commodities from Earth is crucial to achieve such goals and operate the ISS. To date, NASA's Space Shuttle, Russia's Soyuz, and Progress have played vital roles in transporting such cargo. However, after the retirement of the Space Shuttle, Japan's Kounotori will have sole responsibility for transporting large cargo to the ISS. Konotori is approximately 4 meters in diameter and 10 meters in length. It can accommodate a sightseeing bus and is capable of transporting cargo up to 6 tons. Konotori's structure is configured with 4 primary components. It is capable of transporting both pressurized and unpressurized cargo with 2 cargo modules. The pressurized logistics carrier accommodating pressurized cargo, and the unpressurized logistics carrier accommodating unpressurized cargo, respectively. In addition, a large-sized hatch is adopted for the first time on an unmanned cargo vehicle, installed in the pressurized logistics carrier and allowing large experiment racks to be loaded. This large-sized hatch will enable the smooth transportation of supplies from Konotori's PLC carrier and the ISS. Let's take a look at the 6 sets of primary cargo Konotori 3 will transport in this mission. GEM, Small Satellite Orbital Deployer. A device to be attached to the robotic arm of Kibo will enable the launch of small satellites into orbit. In the upcoming ISS long-duration mission, astronaut Akihiko Hoshide will be responsible for operating this system and deploying the satellites. The small satellites, which will be deployed by the system, are also loaded on Konotori 3. Compared to a rocket launch, this transportation method will simplify development testing and alleviate the satellite's vibration durability. The development and application of small satellites is expected to expand space developers and also cultivate human resources. Aquatic habitat. This experiment equipment allows the multi-generational breeding of killifish and other small fishes. Breeding experiments of killifish on the space shuttle only last up to 2 weeks, whereas this equipment enables experiments to be performed for maximum 90 days. The critical importance of multi-generational breeding is the fact that it will enable us to observe the adaptability of species and the long-term effects caused by a space environment. Re-entry breakup recorder. 2 types of devices will be loaded in this mission. To structure a future recovery system, this device will collect and accumulate flight data, such as evaluation of temperature and velocity upon re-entry to the atmosphere. Water recovery system, catalytic reactor. The International Space Station relied on fresh water from Earth, but in 2009, a water recovery system was adopted and activated. The water recovery system recycles and purifies wastewater from the International Space Station's cabin humidity and sweat emitted from the crew's bodies. The recycled water is purified into fresh drinking water and also used for cleansing and conducting experiments. A minor malfunction has occurred in the station's existing system. Upon NASA's urgent request, Konotori 3 will transport the spare part of the equipment concerned. Multi-mission consolidated equipment. This equipment will be attached to the Japanese experiment module Kibo's exposed facility. The equipment comprises 5 different sets of experiment apparatus. This has enabled the sharing of vital experiment machinery on various missions. Space Communications and Navigation Testbed, SCAN. An experiment device developed by NASA and capable of investigating the next generation software-defined radio, one of the means of space communication and navigation. The system is capable of corresponding with diverse means of communication, for example, mobile phones, wireless LANs, and PHS. Countries worldwide have high expectations of experiments using this system, since it can be applied to disaster relief measures on Earth. Considering that Konotori 3 has been entrusted to transport NASA's sophisticated experimental devices and life support equipment vital for astronauts and the operation of the ISS, we can sense NASA's trust in Japanese technology. Konotori 3 will be launched from the Tanegashima Space Center aboard the H-2B launch vehicle. After separating from the H-2B, it will establish communication with Earth and approach the International Space Station, which is orbiting Earth at a velocity of 7.7 kilometers per second, enabling it to traverse the Japanese archipelago in 4 minutes. When Konotori 3 enters the vicinity of the International Space Station, it can commence direct communication with the ISS through the Proximity Communications System, equipped in the Japanese experiment module Kibo. Communicating interactively through the prox, it will approach the ISS and maintain a distance of approximately 5 kilometers. Subsequently, Konotori 3 will slowly approach and be captured by the station's robotic arm, manipulated by one of the astronauts, and dock with the ISS. Choosing this particular docking method, which focuses on the safety of the ISS, a manned space facility, and its rendezvous synchronizing with the target with the utmost accuracy, is made possible thanks to sophisticated technology. From this perspective, and based on Konotori's past 2 successful flights, Japan has proved its technological strength and operational capability worldwide. In 2012, NASA, which leads space development, will adopt cargo orbital transportation services using a commercial space transportation system to the ISS. Konotori's communication system and operation technology have been adopted on these spacecraft. Transporting cargo safely and securely to the ISS is the key mission for Konotori. Even though Konotori has already proved its transportation capacity on the past 2 successful flights, improvements have been made to Konotori 3 to continue safe and secure transportation. The exposed pallet, which attaches and transports outboard equipment. Up to Konotori 2, the pallet was designed to suit the specification of the equipment being transported. But in the case of Konotori 3, an improvement has been made, allowing devices of different specifications to be placed on a single platform. This will allow quick and flexible coordination under circumstances such as change of plans or urgent transportation. Moreover, made-in-Japan engines and communication systems have been adopted for Kounotori 3, which are vital in achieving stable transportation. Ensuring schedule and price stability, along with manufacturing flexibility, are the merits of employing domestic manufacturers. We believe this will help strengthen our domestic space technology infrastructure.
H2B で打ち上げますコウノトリっていうのは大きな実験装置、これを運べる唯一のロケットになっておりますので、人類全体で考えても大事なミッションを携わっていると思っています。
HTB はですね、衛星の技術とロケットの技術といわゆる有人の技術を集大成したものなので、今後の日本の有人活動のベースになるものだというふうに思ってます。初号機、2号機、3号機、号機を増すごとにですね、緊張感もあってですね、モチベーションもより高まってます。
Kounotori, developed and produced in Japan. And the H2B, also an outcome of Japanese technology. Solid technology and operational skill will engender maturity and establish independent space transportation, paving the way to acquire fundamental technology for developing sophisticated manned spacecraft in the future. Kounotori, flying high for the future, will lift off this summer. Don't miss it.